Hi, my name's David Usher. I'm a visual artist. My practice involves painting landscapes and making pots on the wheel, which I then paint and fire. So today, and I show with Alexandra Lawson Gallery, and I'm based in Toowoomba. Today I'm going to show you how to prepare clay and how to throw on the wheel. I'll be using a white porcelain, which is a David Usher, which is a Clayworks clay. So welcome. Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
Sorry. So I'm just going to clean the wood block down just to prepare some clay first. So you just don't want to contaminate one clay with another clay, ideally. And then, so I'm going to be throwing with Clayworks porcelain JB1, which is a really good clay to throw with. Nice smooth body. So I'm just going to open the bag up, cut it up into some sections and wedge them. So I always keep the bag because I put the clay back in there just to keep the air off the clay. You really don't want to get air on the clay while it's sitting next to the wheel, because it dries it gets a skin on it and it makes it harder to throw. It's lumpy. So I'm just going to cut these up into, this is a 10 kilo bag, so I'll probably throw 6 pieces out of that, which is about 1.5 kilos. Obviously, if you're throwing things that are going to need to be the same, I'd be weighing them. So I'd weigh each piece and get them roughly the same weight. So this is a really important step, preparing the clay. If you get this right, centering the clay and the next step is much easier. So there's a few ways you can wedge the clay. I use a technique which is like a spiral, some people call ram's horn, and you can have a double ram's horn, so you get this spiral happening on both ends, but I usually roll to a cone just because it's easier to put on the wheel. So the idea of this is just to even the clay body up so it's nice and smooth. And then back in the bag, keep it fresh. It's like a cooking show. Don't eat your clay, by the way, it's probably not that good for you. So I'm just telling by the way it feels how well prepared it is. It's just a gentle roll, probably a bit like if you were kneading bread, I think, something similar sort of consistency. This shouldn't take you too long. Only time it's frustrating is when the clay is too firm. So you're probably better off softening the bag up if it's too firm. Although firmer clay is easier to throw a vase shape. So if you're throwing vases, you want them to be firmer. It's a firmer clay. Okay, so that's the first step. Now we're going to move over to the wheel and I'll start throwing. So next step, we're at the wheel. I've got the wheel going. First thing to do before you throw anything is to make sure the wheel's level. So a lot of people, I don't think they check that their wheels are level, and the reason that that's important is because you don't want to be throwing on a wheel that's not level, and this one's not level, because it makes the throwing process a lot more difficult. So I'm just going to level that up. So that should be good. So the reason that's important is because if you're trying to center the pot and the wheel's not level, so it's on a different plane, and you're trying to throw in a vertical plane and center the pot, it's going to make it very difficult. So, and then when you come to turn your pot, the base is going to be on a different plane to the rim, if that makes sense. So do yourself a favour, level up your wheel. Yeah, make life a lot easier. So clay preparation is really important, level wheel, and then you're good to go. So what I've done here is thrown a bat pad, and the reason I do that is so that I can then throw my pots on a bat. And so this is a bat. I pop that on, throw it on that, much easier to get the pot off the wheel without damaging the pot. Especially if you're making plates or bowls. Don't forget your modesty towel. Very important. Okay, turn the wheel on, it's a good start. So I'm just going to be throwing, I've weighed up those pieces of clay, which are about 1.5 kilos. And depending on how firm the clay is, I'll probably throw some taller forms just so I can show how to get the height out of the clay. So bat on the bat pad, make sure it's nice and level. And good to go. Okay, so when you're putting the clay on the wheel, you want to make sure there's no air trapped in the base. That's going to not be helpful. So throw your piece down into the center. Probably the only part of throwing that actually involves throwing is that. So, and then using the speed of the wheel, I'm just going to center this piece up. So I'm just carrying the clay up. Just helps to get the clay centered, and it helps to even out any uneven elements in the clay. Okay, so this is probably the most critical step of throwing and centering. If you can learn to center the clay, whatever amount, if you can learn to center the clay, then everything else will follow that. So it's critical. But clay preparation will help you to center more easily. So it's also important to think about the clay as not being a solid, so it's a semi-liquid. Because what you're actually doing is using the speed of the wheel to direct the flow of the clay. So if you can start to think about the clay as being in a semi-liquid state, and all you're doing is using this flow of the wheel, and you're directing that flow with your hands. Okay, so you're not sculpting. It's not about forcing the clay. It's about redirecting the flow. So once the piece is centered, I'm just going to push down into the base and form a base, and then compress the base. Again, I'm just using the speed of the wheel. So I'm using, for this amount of clay, I'm using the palm of my hand to push down in the middle. So my background is, I learnt production throwing at Library Bridge Pottery, which is Gold Coast hinterland, with the master potter Errol Barnes, who is a phenomenal thrower. dries beautifully. So he taught me, or he tried to teach me everything he knew. And most of the time I was listening. If I wasn't thinking about the surf or something else. So try not to be distracted from what you're doing. I guess that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, so before we get any further, what I've done there is I've formed the base, and then I'm just compressing that base. So working from the outside to the center, just compressing that base. So for a pot of this size, 1.5 kilos, the base is going to be probably maybe 20 millimeters, because I want to turn a foot into the bottom when I'm turning it. So probably better to be a bit thick than too thin. And you get to know the thickness just from the feel, the more practice you have. So base is formed. Every time I'm doing that, I'm just making sure the rim is level. So this rim will end up being the neck or the rim of your bowl. So I guess it's the shoulder of the pot. So if you can control the shoulder at this point, that's going to help you later. So the clay's pretty good consistency. I'm just going to be throwing to get some height. So I'm just using the speed of the wheel again to draw the clay up. Plenty of water. So I'd call that the first draw. Each time I do that, I'm leveling out the top again. Now because the clay is quite soft, I'm only going to have a limited amount of time to throw this form. So I'm going down, pushing underneath the base where most of the clay still is. Just getting in under there. I use the sponge because it gives me a little bit more control, and also it means I don't have to keep reaching for water to do that. And then I'm just going to push in under that and bring that up. So that's the second draw. So again, this is just to get your height for whatever shape you're throwing. Probably if you were throwing a bowl, that would probably be about as high as you'd go, because you want to have enough thickness in the form to bring the form out. And then this will probably be the last draw. There's still clay at the base I'll bring up. So the softer the clay, the less time you have to make the form. So just drawing up again, I can feel the thickness of the wall. So up we go. Each time just compressing that rim. So I'm going to bring that rim in a bit further, just to give it a bit of strength. And every time I do that, I just compress that rim. So if you can control the rim of the pot, everything else will follow. And if your rim starts to get wobbly, it's usually because your hands are moving too quickly up the pot. So there's two things. You need to either speed the wheel up or slow your hands down. So usually it's a case of slowing the hands down. Remember that you're letting the wheel do the work. So the spinning of the wheel is what's doing the work. You're just directing that flow. So that's probably about as high as I'll go with this piece. I'll just open that up again. And I'm just going to get that water out of the base. So always slow hand movements. This is probably the weakest point at the moment. It's probably fairly thin there and it's quite soft, so I need to sort that out. slow, 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 slow. So that's pretty good. So then I use stainless steel rib, really handy tool. Don't need a lot of tools. This is probably the one I would use the most, I think. And this is just to shape the form, but it also takes a lot of the moisture off the surface, so it firms up the wall of the pot, which is, at this stage, you really want that. So I'm just going to take that down, just firm up that spot there, and start to form a shape. Bring that out a bit. So also this shoulder area can be quite a weak point in the pot, so just going to take a bit of moisture out of that. Just firming that up. So all of that's just slip or slop, I guess. It's not doing you any favours, so you want to get rid of that. Okay, so I've got some choices about the shape I make. I was thinking of making a shouldered vase with a closed neck, but the clay's a bit soft. So I'm going to open that up again and just make a fairly straight form that I've made before. But it's a nice surface to paint landscapes on. So I'm just going to open that up. So again, this tool is really handy for whatever you're doing with the clay. I'll get the rest of the water out of the place. So I know that now the base is fine. I don't need to worry about the base of the pot again. I lie. So really important to get all the water out of the base, because you don't want the water sitting in there and cracking the base of the form. And that shoulder that I had there, I'm just going to take that out. Take this rim out. So once you've got your height, depending on what you want to make, whatever form you're making, you really have plenty of options about what you do. It probably depends on what you're going to do on the surface of the pot then. So I like to make these forms that have a curved base and then they flare out slightly. So they're not really referencing anything, but they are they hold a landscape surface really nicely. So, well, I think they do. So a little bit of clay still down the base here, so I'm going to push this out. Not too far. And then straighten this line up here. Great thing about painting on a ceramic form is it's already three-dimensional. So your mark making it just needs to complement the form. I think a lot of people make the mistake of overcomplicating their surfaces. So last thing is just tidy up that shape. And the more you can do to finish the pot on the wheel means the less time you spend trying to sort that out afterwards, turning. So I'm just going to curve that back in there. This will be about the last step. Just going to throw a small line in there. So pretty simple form, but yeah, nice to work on. And then when I turn it, it'll sit on the rim, and I can just finish it off. Last thing is using this tool just to tidy up the base. Check the rim. And we're done. So you can take the bat off the wheel and start another pot. Thanks.